Um, One thing that I feel is going to be extremely powerful for you guys, just to kind of understand as a fundamental concept, specifically when it comes to stagecraft, is how how do you engineer authority in one-to-one communication? Just think about that question for a second. How do you engineer authority in one-to-one communication? Well, what's interesting, it's it's not it's not what people know after you speak, which sounds kind of crazy, right? It's not what people know after you speak. So then, Aaron, what is it? It's what they can repeat. I submit to you guys that you have to be the recurring song that plays in that person's head long after you are done speaking with them. And the reason why I say that is because, and how this applies to one is just because the reality is that with information being in an overloaded state, you're easily forgettable. People don't even remember what they ate yesterday. Ask yourself that. It's like you have to really like sit down and contemplate. Or what'd you do this weekend? It becomes like this whole like mental gymnastics with people. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Right. And the reality is that's not they're trying to be facetious. It's just because of the fact that information is pouring in at milliseconds at the moment. And so the old way, when it comes to engineering stagecraft, the old way would be something along the lines of like you would get on stage, again, take it into a sales call as well. You would meet someone on the phone, you would connect with someone via Zoom, excuse me, team. You would explain a concept. When you explain a concept, you would then try to persuade that person, and then when you persuade that person, you would try to push that person by explaining how much knowledge you have, right? You would try to overwhelm them with how much knowledge you have. But what's interesting is that knowledge does not equate to sales. So what does? What equates to sales is you have to be able to hold focus. You have to be able to control the state. You have to be able to guide the decisions that they make. And like I mentioned just before, let me let Ken in the room. And like I mentioned before, you have to become memorable. Again, my definition of memorable, it's not what they know, it's what they can repeat. But it's not even what they can repeat. I'll take it a step further. It's what they can take away with them, right? Like a handle on a coffee mug. They have to be able to take that away and take that out into the world. And so the next obvious question is, well, how do you become repeatable? How do you become memorable? Right. And so there are, and Eli covers a lot of this, but this can be a whole course in and of itself, just because this is, it's deep. But how do you do things like how do you, condition attention? How do you sustain attention? How do you weave stories in? How do you use generators how do you use attention that manufactures focus in people? How do you call out a room when someone isn't listening? Even one-to-one. How do you deal with someone that is being maybe in a presentation for one-to-many, they're being combative. They're throwing the whole room off. We all know those people, right? The one person that's just there to be the sourpuss. How do you connect with an audience who are naturally skeptics and immediately turn them into the ones that believe? And so again, I think all this stuff is very interesting because I do it one-to-one and I do it one-to-many, but they all have cross application. If you are not memorable, people will forget you. And so I think that if you have any goals for 2026 when it comes to the way that you communicate, you want to communicate in a way that is very sticky in the way that not only people learn, but in the way that what they hear.
So
And
do you
so,
feel like, Aaron, it's from, like you, both you and Eli, and I don't really know like what you call it,
mhm.
but what is it like the alliterations or something? Like the one Eli always says is, the communication with yourself. The communication is the most important thing, and the way you communicate is everything, and the way you communicate is, with yourself is everything. Like, is that really how you feel you should set up? Is more of those like alliterations and frameworks so people understand it, or
Yeah, so what you're saying is, yeah, what you're saying is true. Like the way you communicate with others is the way that you communicate yourself. So it starts with your self-talk, right? But then the other part of it is some of the techniques that you might use, right? In terms of like attention first, communication second, How do you how do you maintain the focus? How do you use language that survives distraction, right? And how you can immediately apply this to meetings. You can apply this to sales calls. You can apply this to objection handling. You can apply this to decision guidance, right? All these types of things, and so yes, part of that, Stephanie, is these techniques that we use, might be, rhetorical based questions, right? Questions that don't require an answer, linking based questions, right? First thought based questions, all these types of things where it allows me to keep your focus. If I cannot keep your focus, then I've lost you. It's making sense so far, team, right? What's up, Ken? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Good to see you.
Excellent.
I'll give you guys like a little bit more. I know this is not what we want to talk about, but I do think you guys will find a lot of power in this. Even if you don't speak one to many, this will still be powerful for you because now you're going to realize that when you are on your sales calls, when you're sitting in a presentation in a bigger room, you're going to pick up on this and you're going to wonder why your brain never retained the information. But you're also going to remember why, like if you do retain the information, if you are seeing success with it, you're going to wonder why it was successful. It's often because of a few of the things that the speaker was doing, right? And so I'll give you guys some context here. Here's what I find the best speakers do, right? The best speakers do. This is how you've seen it, right? You've seen it like this, like a speaker will hop on a stage, or the speaker will hop on a Zoom call or a big meeting, and they'll say things like, um, who here is excited today? Right? Something like that, something like super cheesy like that. Or they might say something like, okay, everyone, so everyone feeling good? Or how's everybody doing? And then someone says, I'm doing great. And the other person goes, I'm doing great too. Someone goes, yeah, same. And then the next thing that they'll follow up with, okay, team, well, I'm excited to connect with you guys today. Any questions? And then suddenly somebody goes, I'm confused on XYZ. The next person goes, I'm confused too. Third person goes, same. And now, without even realizing it, what you have just done is you have just labeled the room. The identity of the room becomes, we are confused. Y'all tracking?
Now, do we want
Yeah.
to do that?
No, you don't want to do that, right? This is what
Okay,
you
great.
don't want to do, right? Yeah. And so you don't want to do those things. But the reason
Yeah,
why that's important, and I know you run some one-to-manys as well, Ken, and
yeah.
it's just because you just don't, you don't know that there's a better way to do it, right? And the mistake that I feel like a lot of speakers, thought leaders, sales managers, whatever it is, communicators that they make is that even if you gave the perfect answer to that person and you help them understand whatever question they had and around them being confused, no matter how perfect your answer, a chunk of the room will still feel what?
Confused.
Bingo. And so, not because, again, your answer wasn't good, but because confusion became the group frame. This is why I often say to you guys, people find what they are looking for. So I don't want rooms to start with confusion. I want them to start with winning, which is why you will always almost see me start a call with wins. There is a method to this. And what's interesting is that, so again, this will sound familiar to a lot of you guys. So I might start a call where I'll go, and by the way, guys, I want to say thank you to everyone here, not because obviously that boosts my ego, but because your feedback. You guys have been crushing it on some of the things that we've been covering these past weeks, and it tells me something important. What does it tell me? It tells me that you guys are implementing. It tells me that it's working. And remember, by the way, for those of you that are still looking for success, this is a process. Nobody masters this stuff overnight, but the fact that you guys are applying this today and seeing movement already, that matters. So, with that said, let's go ahead and let's start with some wins. What did I just do there?
Yeah, you
Jim, what are
set
you
up the
thinking?
win. Mhm.
Jim, what are you thinking? What do you pick up on there? Just one thing I did.
It's like you can set the table and the forks and the knives and the napkins can be all wonky, or you can set the table and everything is neat and orderly to prepare for the meal that you're going to serve.
Yeah,
That's
I
Make
like
good.
that
that.
knowledge. Yeah.
Mhm.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Jim's quick on
Analogy, I love it.
that. Jim dropping real sauce on this.
Mhm.
So he is 100% correct. I have done three things there. I have number one, I've labeled the people in the room are the people who implement, right? They're already seeing that. The second thing I've done, I've labeled the room as people who win. And the third thing I've done there is I've made participation easy, which increases engagement. So engagement increases equals pattern installation. And so then what I'll do is I'll take a step further and then I'll direct the engagement immediately. And I'll say, go ahead, guys, hit that reaction button at the base of your Zoom screen, raise your hand, drop an emoji, show me that you guys are here. What's the real objective? The real objective is compliance. When I ask you something, you do it. You guys see the idea here? And so I'm looking for compliance early on in my audience. And the reason why I think this is so critical is because, I find that the most successful people, like I'll say something like this, like, guys, the most successful people, in the world, they are the ones that look for wins because the truth is that the lens that you use becomes the reality that you experience. And so if you look for proof it's working, well, team, you're going to find that. But if you also look for proof that it's broken, you're going to find that as well. Different lens, same world. And so I tell them this. I know this room is full of entrepreneurs, by the way, people who want to make a difference and people who just want to be able to collect wins and want to be able to stack wins. Now I'll make it a bit bigger than the individual. And so when you guys share wins, check this out. Here's what's interesting. You're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for the room. And then I'll unify everyone. Would you guys agree it's motivating to see other people winning? Yes and yes, show of hands. Yeah. I just made participation easy, right? And now that I made participation easy, then I'll call on someone. I'll go, all right, Mr. Stone, let's kick it off with you, sir. What is a win? Now I have everyone's hand go up in the room, ready to show wins. And so you have to create this norm from the beginning. Otherwise, you'll lose attention. Conversely, so, right? I've seen it the other way. And this part is fascinating to me. And again, I don't even blame people. I'm just like, man, they just need to get in front of the right people. You know what I mean? The right teachers, right? And so, but I'll see it conversely. Like last week, I sat in on a sales training, and this guy, he's from Australia, so I'll give you my really bad Australian accent, but he's from Australia, and he's talking to the room about something or the other, and he goes, "All right, guys, and so here's what you effing gonna do, right?" And he's effing, effing, S and just cursing. And I'm watching the faces in the crowd. By the way, it's like 108 people in the room. And I'm watching the faces in the crowd. And you can tell, like, every time he curses, more so the females, there's like a slight wince in their eye. Like they're uncomfortable, right? He's making people uncomfortable because that language, it's an expletive, so it's a bit more aggressive. And so he's making people uncomfortable. And then he does probably the cardinal sin that you never want to do, right? So this is what not to do, right? Someone asks a question finally. He goes, what questions do you have? Now, naturally, he didn't give any directions on the questions. So you have people unmuting and blurting, and now it's just like an unruly room. And then he finally picks on someone and they go, whatever the question was. And his response was something to this, paraphrasing. Well, you just got to effing do it, don't you? Just do it. I mean, plain as day. And that person that he said that to, he proverbially slapped him on the wrist. So what does that mean? He induced public humiliation. And so now nobody wants to play his game. Because what you've now done, you've created the association by raising my hand and asking a question. I get what?
Black.
Yeah, I get in trouble. Now nobody wants to participate. And so a couple minutes later, he's like, all right, who wants to go next? Nobody was raising their hand.
Crickets.
So he created this norm in the room that it was wrong to ask for help. In other words, asking for help means I'm stupid or it's a silly question. But you created that environment. And so when you guys speak, it's highly important that when you're connecting with people, and I'll kind of piggyback off of this, it's clear you don't want to do that. That's obvious. But you also don't want to do this. Let's go, Paul. Just ask me a random question, dude. Sorry to get you off your calorie steps there, but just ask me a random question.
Yeah, what's the show you and the significant other are watching lately?
Oh man, dude, the other day we tapped back into my childhood favorite, King of Queens. And Paul, check this out, man. It was funny because I love Doug Heffernan's character, Kevin James. He's like one of my favorite comedians. He just says so many funny stuff. And now I'm having a one-to-one conversation with Paul. So what does Stephanie do? Stephanie does. Yeah, this isn't for me. So this is just between him and Aaron. What does Jim do? Jim goes, oh, okay. So let me just go back and finish up this conversation I was having with. And now you've lost the focus because now you've turned one to many into one to one.
Mm,
Have you guys seen examples of this before in your life?
yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you're just sitting there waiting for someone to have a personal conversation in a sea of 50. So we don't want to do that. And so inversely, we want to increase participation. We don't want to slap people on their hand for a bad question. But alternatively, we also don't want to turn this into a one-to-one when it needs to be beneficial. So how do you fix this? One of the ways that I fix this, Paul, ask me the question again.
Yeah, Aaron, what show are you watching lately?
Oh man, the other day I tapped back into one of my childhood favorites, The King of Queens, and this will be beneficial for everyone in the room. Raise your hand if, by the way, if you were like if you were born before like 1990. Just raise your hand real quick. Just by a show of hands, yes and yes. Everyone here born? Okay, cool, awesome, sweet, good deal. And so, I mean, guys, you guys all know the truth. The truth is, before then, comedy had a completely different spin on it. Everybody, raise your hand if you remember a show back in the day called The Love Boat. Everybody remember that show? Yeah, it was a great show. Now, what have I done?
Brought everybody in.
I've created inclusion. You're right. Because if they feel as if that they cannot benefit, if the group doesn't benefit from the question, then why should I listen?
Hmm. That's right.
And so the same is true for a sales question. Um, Example. Brian goes, so let's say that day, let's say you're speaking about something. Let's say you're speaking about, I'll use you, Jim. Let's say you're speaking about real estate and your offer, right? Let's say you're speaking about your offer, Jim, because I know you have a unique offer to make passive income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's say I'm on your webinar and I go, yeah, Jim, this sounds great. What are your thoughts on the next 5 years in terms of the housing market and where houses are supposed to fall percentage base? Which has nothing to do with Jim's conversation. Nothing. Zero. Now, Jim can take two paths. He can either A, answer this person's question, which immediately what does he do? He induces everyone to zoom out
Mm.
because now they're not interested because it's no longer about them. Or B, and this is a little bit more, I don't want to say advanced, but this is more, it takes a few more reps to do this. Or B, I can make Jim feel like I answered his question by involving the whole room. So let's bring it back to sales because I don't know how to do a real estate example, right? I would need to study that market more. But let's just say I'm talking about persuasion. And Jim goes, I love what you're talking about here, Aaron. And the one thing I've always wrestled with is like, how do you get over the spouse objection? We're not talking about spouse objections. We're talking about persuasion. Now, I don't want Jim to feel dumb, but I also don't want the room to feel as if that this is something that doesn't pertain to them. Step number one, you guys know the formula. Great question. Step number 1.5, right? Make it about everybody else. So I might say, I love that you're talking about this. And this is something that I feel like everybody will benefit from. Boom, frame set. Don't leave me, viewer A, B, C, D, E, F. Don't walk away from me. Don't go on TikTok. Stay with me. You're going to benefit from this, right? And one of the ways that I like to look at objections, Jim, because you're right, the spouse objection is a big one. And you guys have seen this before. Everybody raise your hand if you've gotten a spouse objection before. Yeah, of course. We've all gotten spouse objection before. Spouse objections are really, if you think about it, an objection is just what? People have uncertainty. But why do they have uncertainty? Often people have uncertainty because of something that wasn't focused on that we could have done earlier. One of the ways that I like to pre-handle, now what am I talking about? Talking about what the hell I wanted to talk about in the first place, pre-handling objections. But I made Jim feel as if that I answered that part of handling objections, the spouse objections, in order to answer that question, it starts here. So number one, his question isn't devalued, nor is it dismissed. B, everyone feels like they can benefit. C, I still get to talk about what I wanted to talk about. I have created a win-win-win. Y'all see how that works in real time, right? Paul, what you got?
Yeah, it just kind of hit me. It's an example of why is that a good thing? You're trying to take whatever they give you and just BJJ spin it into,
Yeah.
hey, that's a great question, Jim. And this is something everyone can benefit from. Have we all
Yeah.
had that spouse objection? You know where it starts? In the beginning, in planting
Yeah.
that seed. Who are, it's like, regardless of what the question is, it's a great question.
Yeah.
You know why it's a
Yeah.
good question? And then it's almost like email marketing. It's like, I walked down the street today, which reminds me of,
Yeah.
sometimes you never know where you're going, which is
Yeah.
what the journey's all about. And then anyway, so
No, I think it's perfect. I think it's really good. You're right, because you can apply this stuff to that perfect that positive reframe that we talked about the other day. You know, you guys liking this discussion here today? Um,
I think it's so interesting, Aaron, just listening to a lot of people, the more that, I do these calls, listen to Eli, and you really well, one, I just think it's so interesting. Everybody, and I don't know really who was the creator of Eli because you listen to Daniel G, Andy Elliott,
mm,
Jeremy Minor, they all say the same things.
mm,
But when I'm on these other calls, like I was on a call yesterday, somebody teaching about Notion, and it was like she was talking super fast and she was just all over the board. And it was like, and like I knew a couple people on the call and they messaged me on the side going, I can't, I'm overwhelmed. This is brutal. I'm out, I'm out, I'm
yeah,
out. And, and you think, you wonder why these people aren't selling anything is, they're just their presentation. Yeah, they're so caught up in all of the minutia, the details and all the things, and they're talking super fast. That's the other thing I think tone and pace is so important. Something I really have to learn because I'm a fast talker. And
yeah,
I've had to learn too that I have to really slow down my talk. And the other thing that I'm realizing, and yeah, I guess kind of touching, I think with these classes is, I know my content so well, and I just assume that everybody else knows this stuff. And I
mm,
think and so I think when I'm talking, it's like, oh my God, this is so elementary. And then I get people going,
mhm.
wow, I've never heard that before. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? But I forget. I've been doing it for 25 years. They
For
haven't,
sure,
right?
for sure.
And so that's what I've realized. And again, your little things like third grade level.
Mm,
I even say
mm.
that to my clients.
No,
And
don't say
I said it to
that.
one of my clients the other day. She's like, well, that's kind of rude. And I said, she's a mobile optician. I said, I don't know about glasses, fits, and frames. I mean,
Uh,
to break it down. I said, I don't
Mm.
even know what you're talking about. And I talk to
yep,
you every week,
yep.
and she was like, oh, okay. And she said, yeah, that was really helpful for her,
So good.
just so thank you for that too. I know it's kind of off on a tangent, but just the
No.
more that I hear the right way from you and from Eli, and then you
Mhm.
start to notice it in other people, which then I turn around and be like, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing the same things that, sometimes the things that bug you in
You
other
make
people are
these.
things you do yourself?
And you know what it is? You're right, Stephanie, but that's why I said to whether it was Ken or somebody, I said, where I was like, I don't even feel like I'm not even angry. Like they just, you know why? The people that teach this stuff, the reason why they do it because it's coming from this place. They just love what they're doing, but they do not know how to wrap it. This
Mm.
is why I fully submit to the idea every person, if you like, again, creating your signature webinar is important, your presentation, but I think I would even argue more importantly than that is how to do effectively what we're talking about, stagecraft,
Mm.
right? Because it doesn't matter how many things I know if I'm not able to hold your attention, or if, like to Stephanie's point, I overwhelm you, because then you tune out. And then you start to say to yourself, this is too hard to learn, or I can't do this. And so you just DQ yourself. And often part of DQing yourself is number one, again, like Stephanie said, you're using language that makes me feel less than intelligent. And so if I'm tapping into language that makes me feel less than intelligent, then I no longer want to do the thing.
Mm.
So I'm always looking to speak at a third grade level, because the more simple I speak, the more intelligent you what?
You feel.
Feel. By the way, that is a fill in the blank technique.
Mm.
When you do that with your audience, it's another way to keep their focus. And
Say that
so,
again. What did you say? The more the level I speak at, the more
yeah, the
intelligent
more
you
the more
feel.
simple I speak, the more intelligent you feel. Because the better you can understand me. And this applies for anyone that's doing VSLs. This applies to your sales calls. You have to speak. You have to figure out a way. So when I first started, I would use this app called Quillbot. I haven't used it in a long time, but I would write something, and then it allows you to like choose the angle in which you'd like to speak. Formal, polished, simple, casual, etc. You guys get the idea. And so I would always choose, you can even modify it also for like IQ level as well. And so I would always choose like IQ level that's equivalent to like a third grader, no more than like a fifth grader. And then I would say, okay, I would read it again, and it just strips down the syntax to its most simplistic form. And that's the way I want to communicate, you know. As a speaker, as a communicator, it makes you far more effective. If you grandstand on a YouTube video or a presentation and you think that you feel good because you've used words that sound good to you, but no one else knows what you're saying, you've only made yourself feel good. Again, you've stroked your own ego. But the room walks away saying, I don't know what half of what that person was saying. Two things, write this down, two things that people will always say to you when they listen to when you open your mouth. Number one, can I listen to this person? Second thing, can I learn from this person? You have to answer those two questions. If you do not, you will lose your audience. So again, can I listen to this person and can I learn from this person? If they say to themselves, those two things are not true, you've lost your audience. And part of that is some of the micro stuff that we're talking about here, right? Um, if you've ever been in a room, have you ever been in a room where like I don't know, maybe it's a more advanced room, maybe some people know their stuff, or maybe there's some people that have kind of like been through that cycle, that sales funnel. Bottom line is they come in a little bit skeptical. Anybody ever experienced something like that? Yeah. Maybe even you've come in skeptical, right? Excuse me. So if I'm teaching like a let's say if I'm teaching like a master class for like advanced salespeople or just people that, they think everything's a scam or whatever. They've been burned before, call it what it is, right?
It's very
What's interesting is it's easier to believe for their perspective. It's easier to, let's say if I'm selling them sales coaching, right? Use that. It's easier to believe coaches don't work. That's the frame, right? Than to face, I've been inconsistent, right? But I believe you do not argue with skeptics. I don't feel like that's the best way. So what is the best way, right? The best way is, by the way, that's called a priming question, right? As I'm teaching you, I'm telling you guys here, right? So what's the number one way? And what would you say is the fastest way to, these are all priming questions. So again, I don't argue with skeptics. So what do? I surround them with group evidence. Again, this is why wins work. When the room believes, the skeptic starts thinking, well, maybe this can work for me too. And if they're saying maybe this can work for me too, now they're listening. That is literally human behavior. And so, if you're doing webinars, if you're doing bigger talks, you have to start with wins. Wins create the group norm, and it also gives your audience the perspective and the lens that they need. There's a few tactical things that I see, and we kind of covered one or two of them already, but there's a few tactical things that I often see what people will do that again, I don't blame them for. They just need better direction. Have you ever and I've even fell victim to saying this before, but anybody ever hear in sales, the most famous what is it? 5 words is does that make sense? Or 4 words. Does that make sense? Anybody ever heard that before? Yeah, of course. We say it all the time. Does that make sense? Right? That's a terrible question.
wow.
Terrible question. Right?
Okay.
If you're going to ask questions that almost, that's the key word, almost everyone can say yes to. So what are some of those questions? What you'll often hear me say is things like, guys, can you see how some of this could be useful? Remember one of those, right? Or I'll say, can you see, Brian, how this might help you? Now the difference is that engagement rises because now I've made it easier for someone to say yes, but I don't want to stop there. I'll take it a step further. If you want the room to go from like 70% engagement to 90% or more, pre-frame the room. So I might talk about a concept and I might go, um, oh, and guys, that is why you have to be able to understand that that the most dangerous place to be is in the middle of the road. Can you guys see why that would be helpful? I'm seeing a lot of head nods from a lot of people, so I can tell this is landing for most of them. Just show of hands, can you see how this would be helpful? And now what I've done, their hands go up. Why? Because people follow the room. And so when I start, when it don't, and by the way, I only need one person to nod their head. And so when one person nods their head, then I'll go, I'm seeing a lot of head nods. And all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. Yeah. And now everyone's out here nodding their head. And then because I've been able to manufacture the group norm, I take it a step further. And then I'll say that second statement where I go, hands up, guys, can you see how this would be helpful? And then, of course, at that point, boom, everybody's hand goes up. And so I'm inserting group think before I ask. The you know, uh when you sit in a lot of these trainings sometimes, one of the things that I don't want to do is I always want to prevent non-response practice. Think about that. I'll give you an example. You ever sit in a room? I don't care. It doesn't have to be sales, just a room where someone will act something later, and then you kind of look around and no one's really engaging. You know what I mean? No one's really like participating, whatever. This is critical. Why? Because if you ask a question and half the room doesn't what will happen is they will practice non-response. And later in the call or meeting or training, when you need an action, they'll do what they practiced. Nothing. And so response must be normal, and it has to be normal very early on. This is why early on I create rapid engagement, rapid in compliance. The more I can get you to do things, the more I'm conditioning you to do things, not in the beginning, but not in the middle, but also in the end. So you have to create that type of rapid compliance. Um, Stephanie, um, you said uh, who taught Eli, right? And one of the I don't know if I'm confident that he has learned from him, but I'll put you guys on some game. One of the first people to do this was a guy named, and you can kind of geek out on this over the weekend. It was a guy, T. Harv Eker.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember him.
You remember him? Yeah.
Millionaire mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
T. Harv was that dude. He was one of the first dudes to create the run to the back of the room and whip out those credit cards and just start. Remember the old school credit card charges, the ching ching, you put them in that thing and you get the pink slip, that kind of thing. And so he was one of the first ones to do it. And if you listen to some T Harv over the weekend or whatever, you'll notice that he was habitual for doing this. He almost used it too much to where it lost its potency, like caffeine, where he would say something. And that's why I tell you, this is needed. Yes and yes. Okay, great. And so what's the first thing you want to do? Yes. And so he would do it almost like every 8 seconds, right? But don't get me wrong, T. Harv is one of the best, and he got a lot of rapid compliance. But his audience never sat there without thinking that participation isn't the name of the game. You couldn't sit back like a robot. You had to participate. So if you want to see some of these things that we're talking about in real time, then I highly suggest, thank you, Mama. Then I highly suggest learning from, I love you, T. Harv Eker. One of the, right?
I
Okay.
heard it's so funny about his name is that the T doesn't stand for anything. He heard somewhere
Mm,
that like a three name thing or something because people think in
mm,
threes or whatever. So
mm.
It stands for like the or the T or so. I
Nothing.
thought that was kind
Yeah.
of funny.
It
So
has
more
no
of these
meaning.
people now have like three names because
That's fine.
somehow it sinks in or
Oh
something like
boy.
that. But
People will create anything just to meet their rationale,
well,
right?
clearly it works. Yeah, like I say, yeah, he was a master. Do you know, one thing, Aaron, I don't want to, I know other people have questions too, but
Mhm.
so are you saying kind of just, when you said at the end, like if people have a question, and nobody answers, so always just getting them to start asking questions or responding to questions right away in the beginning. So is that what you're like? That's the tone or the pace you're setting up.
Mhm.
So instead
Totally.
of, when people talk the whole time, oh, anybody got questions? And it's silent. But if you're asking more questions right from the beginning and getting them to raise hands, that's more of an effective way. Is that what you're saying? Kind of?
Yeah, what I'm saying is I will never start a conversation by saying any questions. Right? I will always start conversations or trainings, meetings with wins to create a group norm. All right. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but wins is probably one of the best ways to do it. And it's the easiest way to teach it, to create a group norm. And then once I create a group norm, I might go a little bit deeper, excuse me, with evidence and call out evidence. And it's really cool, guys. Everyone's winning here. Again, I got a private DM from and all this is true. I'm not making this up, but I got a private DM from Stephanie who says she's increased her AOV. Paul messaged me the other day, said he went 2 for 2 in his sales calls. And so the reality is, guys, the brain looks for evidence. And so if you're looking for reasons why this will work, you'll find that. So again, what am I doing there? Same thing. And so I'm increasing the compliance of the team to number one, look for positivity. And then I'm going to call on people. And because I'm calling on people, no one's going to say to me, dude, I just had an awful week. Why? Because I just said, let's start with wins.
That's
All right.
right. Let's start with wins.
Let's
That's
start with
good.
wins. I'm not looking to start with negativity because if I start with negativity, the entire identity of the room becomes we are negative. And now no one's even open to learning, right? I'll say that, and then Paul, I want to hear from you too. And then I think Jimmy had a question too. The One of the things I'll often do is let's say I'm in a call and let's say I'm in a call and I notice that like someone's just kind of being like, Mr. or Mrs. Tough Guy, like they're just not engaging at all. They're sitting out there, they're kind of like, dry face, they got a stank a little bit on their face, that kind of thing. And so let's just say if I go, show of hands, like this helpful for everyone, and everyone's like, yeah, they're dropping stuff in the channel, in the Zoom chat or whatever, and I'll notice someone there just sitting me very stoic, right? And so I'll call them out in front of everyone. And so calmly, though, I'll say, okay, great, awesome. So, Marcus, are you seeing how this lands? With my hand up, right? And then by putting my hand up, now everyone is looking at who?
Marcus,
Bingo. They're all looking at Marcus. What is Marcus going to do?
put his
Right?
hand.
Marcus is going to go, he might raise his hand or he might nod his head or he might give me a thumbs up in defiance, right? He doesn't want to give me the hand, right? He wants to be defined. So he might give me a thumbs up. Whatever. I don't care. I got him to comply. But here, I won't stop there. I'll say, awesome. I love it. Cool, man. I just wanted to make sure you caught it. I saw everyone else's hands go up, not yours, but good to see you got it. Now Marcus is back in. Because what I've done is I've essentially softly called him out in front of everyone. And so it does a few things. Number one, for those that maybe weren't listening, what are they doing now?
Listening.
Oh, you bet. Because what happens is they don't want to what, Brian?
They don't want to be Marcus.
Bingo. They don't want to be Marcus. And so the room knows that I'm paying attention. And so response speed increases next time. That is rapid compliance because you are setting a standard of the room from the beginning. Paul, what you got?
The things like priming questions, right? The fill in the blank technique. I'm sure there's more.
Oh,
My
yeah.
mind went to like, how do I weave this into YouTube content, emails, right? Like, obviously, you're not going to have people fill in the blank as I'm writing an email, but I just think about I've made probably 1,000 YouTube videos at this point, and some people, their videos take off, some people's don't. And I'm like, man, I wonder how much of this is like, I'm just talking and not using these techniques because whether it's YouTube or a webinar or a one-to-one conversation, people might be tuning out if there isn't that opportunity to have that rapid compliance in the hook.
Yeah, dude. So much, bro. So much.
Okay.
If you don't realize that this is the way that people learn, then the truth is that you're losing. And the reason why you're losing to someone else who is achieving that rapid compliance. Because you know how like they talk about virality, is that it? To go viral, virality? um is like the hook and like the creative, you need like something catchy on the picture to get people to like click the button and things like that. um that is part of it, right? You could do an excellent job there, but then the moment that you open up your mouth to speak, within the first 7 seconds I am deciding whether I want to lean in or if I want to lean out. And so part of that, Paul, to your question, is how you not only A, create engagement, but you have to sustain my engagement. And part of sustaining engagement is utilizing all these tools. Otherwise, and I don't know, I know you have a library of YouTube videos. I know YouTube has analytics, and I don't know how often you dip into that. And you can see it on your analytics in terms of, oh my gosh, people aren't even watching, they're maybe dropping off or the whatever. And the truth is because it's not what you're teaching isn't amazing, what you're teaching is amazing, it's the way that you're teaching it bores me you know and so then I'm just going to go to somebody else. It doesn't take a lot, but it does take skill to understand this stuff. And so you have to do it. And I've seen it inversely, where it's like ChatGPT is a heck of a thing, because I love ChatGPT for all the things it does, but it has turned people into it's a very cheesy version of themselves, where it's just like people will say, and you won't believe this, right? Or maybe you've heard this where they go, and don't miss this next part, right? That's ChatGPT language. But it's a little cheesy because what happens is they don't know actually how to sell it. And so you come off like very if you're in a sales meeting, one to commission breath, right? Or if one to many, you come off very cringe, as they say. And so you want to be able to understand like where those things have a place versus like you just trying to, get people to watch your video, right? And so there's a lot of things that go along with that. If only, creating open loops, how to utilize stories, increasing perception of value, question mastery, which is like what you talked about, right? Linking questions, primal questions, activating questions, rhetorical questions, like all these, it sounds overwhelming, which I promise you it's not.
No, it sounds overwhelming, let me tell you.
Mhm.
I think too,
It's,
if you use chat, if you use your words that
Mhm.
Aaron says, Paul, I mean, I don't know if you do that, but like, you know, use priming questions. Like, help me create this video using priming questions, linking statements,
Mhm.
groupthink, stagecraft, like all the words that you and Eli. That's what I have found is helpful, is to use your language, Aaron, or
Mhm.
Eli's language
Mhm.
into the chat, because then it knows it, right? It knows it, but if you don't ask it, it's not going to give it to you. But I
For
think
sure.
that's what I found really helpful in creating my posts and my content, phrasing of it, is making
Yeah.
sure that you're asking the right ways to set it up.
Yeah, even just the labeling of it to give it a name is super helpful, because I
Yeah.
see that there's a lot of copywriters I see where it's like, you ever wake up and feel like blah blah blah, right? And it's an opening, and I'm like, oh, I've seen this a lot. Or someone in a video will have a hook of like, so why is creatine so helpful? And now people are like, well, crap, I gotta find out. And I've done it
Yeah.
in other content adjacent from health and fitness, but it was just kind of accidental in a way.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
now realizing like there's ways to be really intentional with this, and that there's names, now at least my brain can start to filter in like, okay, at the 5 minute mark, am I weaving in one of these things? And I can actually like strategically write that script, as opposed to just like, all right, what's my hook? Attention, right? And being a lot more, again, like thinking of it as a stagecraft presentation, because it is a stage. It's just a digital stage.
It is. It is. You make no mistake about this. This is stagecraft, and how you engineer that authority one to many is a skill set, and it is an art form. And it just also allows you to just communicate at the highest level. You know, when you learn how to communicate at the highest level, you become you just become a rare breed. There's another guy that I like, and I'll say this, and then we'll sign off for today. There's another guy that I like that I'll share with you guys. I don't like to gatekeep anything, right? Because these people have helped me. I don't know him, but he's a mentor from afar. His name is, interestingly enough, Aaron, right? Aaron McCorder. Look him up. He is a linguist.
How do you spell his last name?
McWhorter. So it's McWhorter, I think, something like that.
Okay.
Aaron McWhorter, and he is a linguist by profession. He's just an insanely intelligent man. And you know, if you just listen, he talks about a lot of things that are way above my intelligence level, but what I can tell you is that I listen to the essence of how he speaks. So what he's saying is very important, by the way, but the essence of how he speaks in a way where this man understands communication at the highest level. And so if you geek out on communication, you'll study from all the greats, not just sales guys, right? I often find that sales guys are just half of them rip off, half of them model, and half of them borrow stuff that's not theirs anyway. But if you look at communication across the whole, then you'll appreciate linguists and what they provide society. So Aaron McWhorter is a great guy.
John, because I'm seeing best-selling linguist John McWhorter on YouTube.
John McWhorter, sorry, John.
Aaron
John.
McWhorter was
Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah,
turf farmer guy. So I was
yeah.
like, dang,
John
this guy's got some
McWhorter.
gold
Yeah,
in his
yeah. He's a
in his
light-skinned
soil.
black guy, glasses. Yeah,
Okay,
You have
yeah,
the
this,
thing, Paul. Can you put it in the chat?
yeah.
yeah.
Did you
John
have it?
McWhorter. Thank you for that.
About to watch some farming and tilling videos.
Yeah, about to skill you up in a different lateral, get you out of fitness. Cool. Sweet. Was this helpful today, team?
Always.
Yes.
Definitely.
I love it. That's it. That's
It's
it.
making
yes.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Is this
Subscribe.
helpful today? Yeah, there you go, right?
It's helpful. I'm raising my hand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Another easy rapid compliance at the end of your calls. You might want to steal this one. And sometimes I might say, okay, guys, did you at least walk into
or
did you at least
advanced
leave the room
driving
with
glasses
1%
that
more
may
value than what you walked in with? Right? I'll say it
Say
again.
that again. Yeah.
Okay, guys, are you guys leaving the room with at least 1% more value than what you walked in with? Now, everyone can agree that they got
Least.
way more than 1%. And so naturally, are you kidding me? I got 100 times more. Why? Because I've conditioned your brain to say to yourself, like if you look at by contrast bias, right? Now, if I said, would you guys agree that what you gone over here is 50% more than what you walked in with, right? I could still get yeses, but I won't get the most yeses. So if I lower that barrier to create an easy yes, and I go, you guys get at least 1% more value than what you walked into the room with? Everyone can agree they got way more than 1%, right?
Well, human nature, Aaron, would make some people just go, no, I didn't get 50%. I mean, just because, what I mean? What I call the silliness of people.
Because you're right, because how do you draw a straight line back to 50%, right, Ken?
Yeah.
Right. Like how do you dictate what would allow you to be 50%? So there's a lot of variables in that.
You're a very pronoun.
But I think as a whole, we could all say at least 1%. So you're spot on, when it comes to that. So sweet. All right, y'all. Let me jump to my next call. As always, thanks for hanging out with me. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
Great weekend.
Have a
You too.
great weekend.